Hi there, time for a game review. This time we're going to look at a PS2 game, and this will be the last review I do for a couple of weeks. I'm about to go on holiday. So this game is a fairly little known game by the name of Splatter Master, and let's have a look at the fact file for this game. Splatter Master was released in 2005 in PAL territories, published by 505 Games and D3 Publisher, and the developer, never heard of these guys before, VSC Vind et Un Systems Corp. I assume they're French, but to be honest I've got no idea. Price I paid for the game was £3.99, and the going rate on eBay tends to be £15 to £20 at least. But there is currently a copy on eBay for £5.99, so if you do want a copy of this game and you want to snap it up at a relatively cheap price, I'd go for that right now. But probably first, if you've never heard of the game, you might want to check it out. So let's take a look at it now. Alright, so here's the front cover of the game, which is typical PlayStation 2 packaging. Got the PlayStation 2 logo at the top, and the front cover artwork is not too bad. Got the main character there, the Splatter Master, with his chainsaw and his pumpkin style head, and some of the enemies from the game there as well. One of them got a Jason style hockey mask on. There's some kind of frog creature there. There's some other enemies there at the front as well. Spine is exactly what you'd expect from a PS2 game. Pretty basic stuff. And the back cover's got the blurb about the game and some screenshots, blurbs in several languages. We'll just look at the English language there. So the game's described as an exhilarating action game with a cruel but soft-hearted main character, which is somewhat of a contradiction. And it goes on to tell you that the wizard Jagod has conquered the village. A lone scarecrow did not yield to his wishes. The scarecrow can use the power of his punches or a pair of chainsaws. At the end of each of the 7 levels, humongous bosses are waiting for you, unsurprisingly. And a few screenshots aren't that easy to make out on the back cover there, but you can probably see from that one at least it's a scrolling beat 'em up style game. And there's a bit of blurb at the bottom about who published the game and all the other usual stuff. So let's now take a look at the instruction manual, which again has got the same cover as the front cover of the box, and tells you how to control the game, what all the buttons are on your controller, which you should probably know by now. Got a little bit of a story. The forbidden art is back. Wizard Jagod has used it to form an army of followers. Blah 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 blah. There's a scarecrow, which has already been mentioned on the back cover, has witnessed the whole event and determined to revolt against his creator out of his love for the old couple who were killed by them, or something along those lines. Basically got to rescue some people or save some people or avenge the world, or usual kind of thing. So then it goes on to give you the overview of the main screen, the main menu, and you've got various options. There's also some games that you can unlock once you've completed the main game, and tells you how to play the game, actions, all that kind of stuff, which we'll go through when we actually play the game itself, so let's not dwell on it too much. How to use the chainsaw, various kinds of attacks that you can do, things that you can pick up, and some of the characters of the game. So there's the main character who doesn't have a name, he's just a scarecrow, although he looks more like a small child wearing a pumpkin on his head. That's one of the enemies there, which is a bacteria that's been made more powerful through some kind of magic. And then a couple of the bosses. That's the main boss there on the right, and that's the boss from the first level, as we'll see fairly soon, on the left there. And then the rest of the manual is just the same again in whatever other languages it's being published in. So here we have the title screen, which, as you can see, once again is a repeat of the front cover artwork. Nothing much more to say about that. You can see the logo there and the character in the background. So let's press start, which gives you the options of a new game. To continue game, you can save your progress throughout the game, and there's also options. Take a quick look at those. Don't think there's anything too spectacular there. You've got difficulty level, we'll just keep it at normal. Button type, we'll leave it as the normal default. You can have the blood as red or green, and vibration on or off on the controller. There's also these options here, which are all question marks at the moment, which I believe are things you unlock at various points during the game. Maybe even if you just complete the game, other options unlock themselves there. So we'll just stick with all the defaults there. go back to the main menu and get on with the game. So we'll start a new game, and to begin with you get this very demonic looking background and a bit of an intro to the game, which you can read through yourselves. I don't need to read that to you, but basically this plot for the game is that this wizard's kind of given animals massive strength foreign to their nature, done something nasty with some kind of black arts, and this lovely old couple has been, I believe, taken away, attacked and seriously injured by one of Jagod's followers, etc, etc. And it goes on to tell you that there's a scarecrow that had also been transformed by the secret art, but the scarecrow was different. He wanted to protect the farm and the old couple. He loved them as if they were his parents, which is slightly strange for a previously inanimate object. So yeah, basically you're going to avenge the injury to this old couple and fight off this evil wizard and these weird mutant creatures that he's created with his magic. So the game is now loading, and you get this overworld map. You can't move around on the map. You start in one place and gradually progress to the castle on the right hand side. So here's the first level, the Crow Farm, which, as you can see, has got a lot of corn in the background. Quite nice graphics. I do like the graphics in this game. They're very charming sort of style. Moving the D-pad makes your little scarecrow guy walk around incredibly slowly, but luckily if you move the analog stick he can actually run around, and he runs quite madly by like throwing his arms behind him and throwing his head forward. There's a couple of controls. You can jump and you can punch things, such as that box. That's how you do your fighting. Basically it's a scrolling beat 'em up, left to right scrolling typically. You beat the creatures and make your way to the end of each level where there's a boss, which we'll get to in due course. There is another thing you can do, which is unleash the chainsaw, which I'll get to in a moment. So here are the enemies. These are the most commonly seen enemies in the game. Pretty easy to get rid of to start with. These are apparently massively deformed bacteria, and they basically just look like kind of evil tea bags really, with the little grinning faces. So like most scrolling beat 'em ups, you fight off a batch of them and then you can move on further in the level. So let's see if we can get a few of them after me. Oh yeah, there's the next baddies with these like little parrots that run at you. Not a lot happening at the moment other than me getting hit by that thing. The enemies don't seem to really come at you that often. They just quite often just kind of stand around, like you can see the one on the left there, just kind of standing around doing his own thing. Right, so I'm just going to show how the chainsaw attack works, and that works by pressing the L1 and R1 buttons together, and if you do that it'll unleash the chainsaw. You can leave it then powered on like this and then hit people with it, but that drains the fuel, which you can see in the gauge at the top left there is the fuel gauge, and also a health bar as well with the hearts. But the main thing to do with the chainsaw is trying to get 3 or 4 enemies at the same time. If you do that, then you get sort of bonus points and things. You don't want to really waste the chainsaw fuel on these pretty simplistic enemies. The background does interact with you. I was going to say you can interact with the background, but it's actually more the background interacts with you. For example, if I walk in front of that water tower, it falls over, which will do me damage if I don't get out of the way of it. There's another heart. It's a bit erratic. Anyway, there's 3 of these guys now, so let's see if we get them all. There you go. If you get 3 or more, it kind of gives you a bonus, gives you more coins. The coins, by the way, you're collecting, you can use in a shop later on in the game. And there's another different type of enemy coming up, which is a frog with a very big tongue, who kind of fires his tongue out and spins around. Again, not too difficult to get rid of, as you can see. Another gang of baddies coming towards me here, so let's see if we can get them to come quite close, and then use the use the chainsaws again. So you get the idea. Pretty generic scrolling beat 'em up. Nice graphics, as I said, kind of cute, charming graphic style. but then mixed with like all this all-out gore of the blood flying around. Oops. Here you've got some holes which if you do fall in you do lose some health, so you want to avoid those. Bit more fuel, probably need that in a minute. And then here comes the first sort of mid-level boss, which is a giant tractor. Not too difficult to avoid, hopefully. You just wait for it to rev against you, then jump out of the way, punch it a few times. Same thing again. Yeah, not too difficult to get rid of, really. Interesting premise of beating up a tractor. Oh, it's got some baddies coming out of it now. Just use a chainsaw on that. And that's blown up the tractor. And on we go further across the level. Some more of these little bird things which are annoying. One thing I haven't mentioned is you've got like a flying headbutt attack. If you jump up in the air and come down at the right point, you can actually lay a headbutt on some of the enemies. Not that easy to do. And you get some bigger giant bird things, which are actually not much more difficult to beat up than the small ones. They're just bigger. There you go. That's him gone. Hopefully this is the last guy now. Yeah, there we go. So we're moving on to the end of the level boss, if I remember correctly. Yeah, here he comes. He sounds big. So you get this introduction, and he is a giant crow. Got a variety of attacks. The main thing, of course, is just hammering with the chainsaw first. Get him as much as you can with the chainsaw. Oh, I wasted that there. And then basically the attack I've found is most useful is just get close to him and keep hammering him. Try not to get hit by him. It actually turns out to be fairly easy to get rid of. If you let him fly around, he can like dive bomb you and stuff like that, but actually that was really easy. You just get close to him and punch him. It took me a few attempts to work that out, but in the end it wasn't too difficult at all. So that's the end of the first level. Nothing too exciting so far. And on we move to the second one, which is a town, I think. Yeah, Ghost Street. And it's more of the same really. In fact, this is more like your classic sort of Final Fight style beat 'em up, at least in the location. There's some evil trash cans that where creatures jump out of, and we got 4 on that time with the chainsaw. But it's more of the same. Fight the bacteria things, which are the most frequent enemies. You can see the trash can there's getting a bit irate towards me, and if you get close to it, sometimes an enemy will pop out of it, although I managed to get rid of it quite easily that time. There's another gang of bacteria just having a chat. Oh, that one fell down a hole. I forgot there's a manhole there, which you have to be careful not to fall down. So not a lot more to say about the game at this point. I'm just going to progress my way through it a little bit. There's things like that, cars rushing across. That's the shop, which we'll come back to later. The one thing I haven't mentioned about the game so far is you only get 1 life, and if you lose your life, and then get game over and continue, you restart right from the beginning of the level, which is very annoying. So if I do lose a life at some point, that'll get a bit frustrating. But to be honest, the early levels aren't too bad. So I'm just coming towards the shop, which I mentioned earlier. I'm just going to finish off this guy here. I just want to show you what this thing in the trash can actually looks like. There you go. It's basically a green thing with a bone that tries to whack you with the bone. So I'm going to go into the shop now. And the shop's run by a very scantily clad woman. And basically when you're in the shop, you can use whatever gold you've picked up to power yourself up. There's various power-ups, some of which you can't afford, including, I don't know if that's an extra life maybe, and death mask. The things I can afford, which I'm going to use, is to power up my life a little bit. There we go, that's better. And also the maximum amount of gas I can use, so I've powered up those quite substantially now, which will help later on in the game. And on we go. Now this part of the game here shows that it isn't just a straightforward right to left scrolling beat 'em up. There are actually mild platforming sections involved as well. In the 3D space this becomes quite difficult. As you can see, I've just jumped straight over that platform and now I've just fallen down it. So this is a little bit more tricky. Oh god, I'm making a right mess of this now. Let's see if it was actually worth all that just to get to this thing. No, there was nothing there after all that. So again, I've jumped back, try not to... You just got to watch where your shadow is really, and you can move around in mid-air. But yeah, so there's a bit of mild platforming action in this section. Nothing too challenging, but I still managed to lose several health points doing that, although I've just restored them all by the looks of it there, which is helpful. And that was it, that's the platforming section. And then you move into this area and these statues of these flying pigs do jump out and come after you. That really wasn't really worth doing. There you go, that was the flying headbutt I was talking about. That'll come into play a little bit later on more so than... Oh god, I forgot, yeah, there's collapsing platforms here as well, just to make things a little bit more tricky. Probably best off just avoiding most of that. Ah! There are some power-ups. No, there aren't. There's nothing worth getting there. I think this is the end of level boss for level 2 now, which is a woman that throws hamburgers at you, like a hamburger shop effectively. And this one's a little bit more tricky. Let's try and get rid of these three first. There we go. You've got to try and... These hamburgers she throws are basically bombs. And what you've got to try and do is punch the bombs and throw them back towards her. I don't know what I'm calling her here, it's a shop basically, it's like a robot, not really a woman. So let's see if I can demonstrate what you... Right, here we go. So if you hit them in the right place, they go back and they blow up the top of the shop. It's just a case of repeating that until... Oh, I'm trying not to get blown up. That wasn't very good. But you can see it's now blown some of the face of the robot thing off. Can't really use the chainsaw attack on the shop thing on this one. Oh yeah, and then it turns into lasers as well. Fires lasers at you, so you've got to try and jump out the way of them when they focus in on you. I'm not doing very well here. I seem to be missing the hamburgers every time at the moment. It's going quite badly. Ah. Oh. This is largely a disaster at the moment. I can't even get out of the way of that one. You definitely can't punch the shop or anything like that. So I've got to wait till she throws the burgers at me again. Here we go. There we go, that's what I'm trying to do. Better. That was promising. Is that it? I'm not sure. Yes, it is. And at the end of each level from this point onwards, the shop comes back, and if you've got enough money you can buy something else, but I haven't, so we move straight on to the next level. So it starts off, you're in a factory, unsurprisingly, and it's more of the same for the most part, but this level does introduce some more puzzle based elements. Also some different enemies start to appear in this one as well. And the first thing you have to do is negotiate past these steam things. If the steam hits you, then you lose some health, so you want to avoid it. There's conveyor belts. That's what you're not supposed to do there. But the good thing here is you can actually lure the enemies into the steam. So if you're precise enough, you can actually wipe most of the enemies out without even actually touching them. What you have to be careful of at the end of this conveyor belt is that it just goes off into a pit, which I didn't notice the first 2 or 3 times I actually played the game, and just fell straight into it. Also, you now see the bacteria things start to appear with Jason hockey masks on and axes, so the enemies are becoming more dangerous. So now you actually go up a level in the factory. And this is where some of the puzzle elements start to come into it. So you've got to deactivate that force field there by getting this thing to not crush you, but to crush the 3 coloured blocks. So you have to stand there, wait for it to fall. It's not the most challenging of puzzles, but it is a puzzle nonetheless. And if you're clever, you can also get it to squash the enemies at the same time, which sometimes works. Oh. So there you go, there's the door disabled. And it still carries on moving around. I'll go get rid of this thing, I suppose. And on we go to the next section. No, there's still a little bit more to do yet. This section is much the same as the last bit, but there's no puzzles to unlock or anything. You basically got to try and use the plunger thing to squash the enemies, is I guess the reason you're supposed to be moving around, which sometimes works and sometimes you just get crushed yourself. Yeah, that was a disaster. And still it goes on. Oh, this is where I usually lose. Oh, I'm making a right mess. This is usually where I lose a life. I could really do with some health now. Oh, there we go, that's useful. And this now sees the first appearance of a new kind of enemy, which is the flying bacteria thing, which is handily wiped out by that thing there. And there's also some weird kind of robotic snail creature things. Which get a bit excited when you get quite close to them, fire missiles towards you. And they're best off wiped out with a chainsaw, I feel. And another set of conveyor belts, but this time the conveyor belt comes towards you. And as you can see, the dreaded bat enemies are most prevalent here. Nigh on impossible to get rid of. You can't work out where they are. There we go, got in one hit. This bit's incredibly infuriating. Oh, I just can't get him. It's absolutely annoying. Oh, got him. Or I should say the steam got him. And finally, with not a lot of health and no chainsaw fuel left, I get to the end of level boss through this door. I don't actually expect to beat this guy now because I probably haven't got enough health left, and he's a bit difficult to work out how to avoid some of his attacks. It's also a bit rubbish looking. It's like a big mechanism, and he does this kind of whirring fan thing which is quite easy to avoid. You just run to the edge of the screen, you don't get dragged towards it, so that's not really a problem. It's not that bit that's the issue, it's later on that it becomes an issue. Oops. It's this bit, I can't work out how to avoid him for this bit when he comes rushing towards you. Oh. And then you get this, which is laser beams, which are actually fairly easy to avoid. So the attacks aren't too varied, and it's only really this attack that I'm not too sure about. Oh no, I forgot, he now starts to fire steam at you as well, which I have to avoid. Oh, it's all going terribly badly now. The steam's not really an issue to avoid. Oh. Oh, annoying. Not far off beating him. Just got to try and get the last few hits on him. Oh, a couple more hits. Oh, that's so annoying. I only needed 2 hits and he's just killed me. Which means I have to go right back to the start. So there's your game over screen, yes or no to continue. If you click yes, he comes back to life, goes back into action, and it sends you right back to the start of that level. So I'm back at the end of the level. This is now my 5th attempt at this level. I've got virtually maximum health and a good amount of chainsaw fuel as well. If I can't beat this boss this time, this will be my 5th attempt. I'm basically just going to give up. Let's see how it goes. So first thing is try and use up the chainsaw on him. Get rid of him as much as possible that way. Oh, that wasn't very good. I've got a lot of health left. I'm absolutely convinced it's impossible to avoid that attack. So you've just got to take those hits and try not to get hit by anything else, I think. He's unleashed the lasers on me already. Now here comes the steam, which is not a problem to avoid in any way, shape or form. It's not going too badly so far. Oh, that was just a waste of a health bar. Oh. This is definitely the most difficult boss so far, by a long way. Now he's suddenly unleashing that attack again. Frustrating. Oh, I'm so close to getting him. One more hit and he's gone. Got him at last. I can't tell you how pleased I am to manage that, because that's been incredibly frustrating. So again, we go into the shop, and I've got enough money to buy the double jump, so I'm going to do that. That'll prove useful against those flying bat monster things. Nothing else now available, so on to the next stage. And this is by far the strangest stage so far, the Requiem Forest. And it starts off much like all the others, with a lot of these little squeaky bacteria-like enemies. So as you can see on this level, we've got the Friday the 13th inspired bacteria attacking again. Also the frog's back. But this is the most unique of the enemies encountered so far. The musical toadstool. So he blows a little trumpet and the musical notes fly out, and if they hit you then they do you damage. He's quite an annoying little bugger. Also the toadstool on the left there that's blasting out that pink mist, that is dangerous, that does you damage as well, so we want to avoid that. And now here comes the other musical toadstool. This one plays the drums and blasts out like a crescendo of musical notes all over the place, and blasts out the pink fog. This guy is well dangerous, and yet he's so cute. So you can jump on these toadstools, that bit's safe. Look at him go, playing those drums. So here we come to the most challenging part of this level, and up until the end of level boss at least. You've got 4 of these big toadstools blowing stuff at you. There's a couple that you can jump on fairly safely. And again we've got the really annoying enemies as well, the really annoying bat enemies. Also these black ones here have got like little springs on them or something. The one on the ground there is on like a pogo stick, for want of a better expression. That bit wasn't too challenging actually, but it does get worse. Here's another drumming toadstool as well. Quite difficult to get close to this guy because of where he's standing. Oh, he's killing me. Love the animation on him playing the drums though. He's really impossible to get to. That's the only one solution here. That's chainsaw this mushroom into oblivion. Okay, that got him. And now we come to the end of level boss, which unsurprisingly is a giant toadstool. Not a very pretty one either. And he's got what looks like a conductor's stick, but is actually more like a sword. He blasts out the pink fog, which is obviously dangerous. You didn't need me to tell you that. You try and avoid that wherever possible, which is not that easy. You can chainsaw him. There's only one place you can stand really to avoid this, which is right in the corner. Oh, and I'm nearly dead. This is not going well. I have chopped off one of his tentacle things, and now you can see that he blasts music out at you as well, which is actually relatively easy to avoid, but what's not easy to avoid is that mist. And there goes another life, and therefore I have to continue again and start from the beginning. As you can see, it's quite a tricky game. Let's go at this guy again. Yes, terrifying. The main thing is just to stay out of the way of this gas cloud. and also the musical notes when they get thrown out. As you can see, I've already got rid of one of his protuberances, for want of a better expression. Quite an imaginative boss, as many of them have been. The clockwork guy at the end of the third level was a bit of a crap boss, but overall I'd say the bosses are quite nicely done. Overall the graphics in the game are pretty cool. I must have this guy this time, surely. Let's not do anything silly. He seems to have a bit of a blind spot there. Oh no! That's a disaster. I could be in big trouble here now. You really got to be careful. Oh, now he's got a sword that he's swinging as well, and I've got next to no health left. One hit and I'm basically dead now, so I'm really in big trouble. No, I don't believe it. I had full health there as well. That's a disaster. I think I've about had enough of this game now. It is incredibly difficult and very frustrating with the restarts. I have got to the following level. In fact, I can show some of the next level because I think I saved it at the start of the next level. So let's just get back to the menu in a second. Yeah, so I did get onto the next stage, which is the desert themed one, the Train Canyon. Never got past this level so far, and I don't imagine this is going to change during this playthrough because I've been rubbish during this playthrough compared to when I was playing it when I was trying the game out. So what I'll do is I'll play through as much of this as possible and sum up the game. Firstly, graphics and sound are pretty cool. I like the sort of, it's like I guess like a 2.5D in that it's basically a 2D scrolling beat 'em up, but it's got some 3D effects and some nice 3D rendered graphics as well. Overall the characters are quite interesting. The enemies get a bit boring, they're a bit samey throughout the game, although it does introduce different enemies as you progress through the game. The level design's quite cool. Especially this level and the factory level I'm a fan of as well. On this level there's various places where you fall down holes, which is quite annoying, but then there's various facts about the game that are annoying. The music's fairly generic, it's just kind of sort of thrashy metal background music, which kind of blends into the background as you're playing the game anyway. Sound effects are pretty cool, the usual sort of fighting game sound effects, and some annoying whining sounds from a lot of the enemies. There's just massive amounts of these enemies on this level. There you can see what happens if you wipe out 6 in a row altogether. Not much else to say about the game. I do like it. It's, as I say, it's got a kind of charming quality to it. The characters are quite nice. I like the sort of horror theme of it, mixed with a kind of cute beat 'em up. It's quite a nice idea and very original. It has got some pretty serious flaws. One is it's difficult, which is fair enough, I suppose. You know, games are supposed to be fairly difficult, and that sort of harkens back to the old 2D scrolling beat 'em ups where the end of level bosses were particularly difficult to dispose of. But the main problem with it is there's no continues within the game, there's no lives, so once you lose your health, you've got no chance. You have to go right back to the start of the level each time, which is just incredibly infuriating. The other infuriating thing is these bat enemies, which it's really difficult to judge where exactly they are in the air because of the 3D perspective. I guess that if you just line yourself up with the shadows on them and hope for the best. But there's a lot of running around, doing like flying headbutts and jumps and things like that. That was that smash attack I was talking about, by the way. So moving on through this level a little bit further, and it's more bats, more of the same sort of enemies as we've already been seeing a lot of. And it's getting a little bit on the tedious side now, even though it's quite an enjoyable game. So it's quite a difficult game to get hold of, and it's certainly fairly unique on the PS2 because there weren't many scrolling beat 'em ups of the old school sort of arcade style released for that console. So I'm going to keep it for that reason. It's certainly a curiosity if nothing else, and one of the more unusual games to find on the PS2.
I'll just see how much further I can get in this, and then I'll wrap it up, because it is getting somewhat tedious now. So you've got a bit where you've got to navigate around the platforms, and again, this is one of these bits where it's really difficult to judge where it is you're trying to land from when jumping from one platform to another. So lots of lost health during this. Then you get this weird thing in this train carriage. I don't really know what that's supposed to be. Some kind of weird mutancy thing, but it doesn't really do a lot of damage to you. Or you do more damage to yourself trying to jump from one platform to another than this thing ever does. That's one way to get past that section, I suppose. But yeah, that's kind of horrible, rather grotesque. And it carries on throwing stuff down on the screen, none of which is very interesting. Then there's another section which has got these 3 compartments in the train. Oops, kind of overused the chainsaw a bit there. The chainsaw is a useful little addition to the game. I haven't really mentioned that at all, but it's quite a cool little addition. It's something different. You are supposed to be able to sort of get bonus power or something from those multi-chainsaw attacks, and also there's also like parrying and various special combos you can unlock, but it's pretty difficult to do, and it's much easier just to basically hit the punch button and hope for the best. I could probably get further through the game if I'd learned the moves a little bit more, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Okay, so is this the end of the level? No, it's not. There's another section here with lots of things. Oh yeah, there's glass on the floor, which is a new hazard. You touch that glass, you lose health. I haven't got a lot of health left to lose. It's not looking too good for me, and I've pretty much had enough anyway. Having played this for over an hour, having to redo all the levels. So that's it, that's game over, that's enough. Not a bad game, not a classic, but certainly something that's a little bit different on the PS2.
If you only knew the power of the dark side.
2, 1, 0.